Regio, that stands for Urban and Territorial Development, and we all there are big fans of Professor Barca. We've been, as a matter of fact, quoting it all along this programming period. I even know by heart some of his quotations, such as like, further away you are from places, the more you risk of falling prey to different bureaucratic separation of expertise and competence. This was my favorite. And so, having heard all these observations on how the cohesion policy could be further improved, when you're talking with people from our unit, you are already preaching to the converted. We speak along the same lines, so to say. But let me start by saying that place-based and integrated approach are already picked up in this current programming period, especially when it comes to its territorial dimension, and particularly when it comes with the urban dimension, which has been particularly strengthened. There is an obligatory earmarking of 5% of ERDF associated with the underlying integrated strategy that had to be developed, and multi-level governance arrangement that had to be reached between the national authorities, regional authorities, and the urban authorities. To facilitate implementation of both integrated and sustainable urban development, we introduced territorial tools such as ITI, which is a brand new tool, in addition to the, so to say, mainstream tools that were also available, such as through the designated program or priority axis. For instance, Prague had both designated program, and they also addressed their metropolitan area through an ITI. So they used actually two of the instruments we put at their disposals. So as a result of this, we ended up having around 1,000 of integrated strategies spread out all around Europe, among which some 800 were for different urban areas. When I say urban areas, it could have been cities, metropolitan areas, it could have been just neighborhoods within the cities. That in itself speaks towards the polycentricity of such an approach. This came with, you know, it was a new, and there was a huge transition involved also from changing from a strategic thinking over the integrated strategy and translating then now into the implementation. So we experienced some delays in implementation of the integrated and sustainable urban development approach, which was somewhat worrisome some time ago. For instance, in 2017, we were at a 34% of project selection. And at that point, we internally struggled to provide evidence for further enhancement of such an approach. However, in the meantime, the pace has picked up. Member states help with a lot of additional evidence. We undertook some studies ourselves. ESPON undertook some studies and provided additional advice. So where are we now at? The package is out, so what do we have there in that sense? Let me start from a bigger picture. So we no longer have thematic objectives. We have moved towards the policy objectives, which are already to a certain extent integrated objectives. We have objectives for smarter, greener, connected, and inclusive Europe. But in addition to that, we have our PO4 policy objective, which is supposed to bring Europe closer to the citizens by further mainstreaming integrated, sustainable development of rural, urban, and coastal areas through local initiatives. This by no means will mean that this policy objective will be a standalone thing, because it would be possible to draw funding from all other policy objectives. This is just a home, so to say, policy objective to integrated development. This policy objective will also further try to link the strategic thinking overall thinking with the local needs and challenges, and it will, of course, incentivize the more collaborative working and decision making. But let me again start from the big picture in terms of collaborative governance. So all in all, the whole cohesion policy is delivered through a shared management system between the Commission and the member states. This will be taken even a step further through negotiations and preparations of partnerships agreements and operational program, because we will be very much, so to say, calling upon the partnership agreement and we'll be exercising what Professor Barca called ex ante toughness in terms of applications of the partnership agreement. So we expect the member states to bring to the table public authorities, including urban authorities, other social, economic, civil society actors early on in the process. This will in a way prevent what we experienced in this programming period, that somehow the priorities that was set for territorial and urban, there was this mismatch between the priorities set at the national level when it came down to integrated strategies that were delivered at the urban or a more local territorial level. In terms of further multi-level governance, we will be also calling upon the partnership agreement and partnership principle when it comes to the elaboration or updating of the integrated strategies. This was not a requirement previously, but now we kind of spelled out some elements that should be pursued for each integrated strategies, and one of these elements will certainly be a listing of contributing partners per the partnership principle. And when it comes to the tools to be used this programming period, the options have been broadened and further streamlined. ITI, which is a new tool, will be maintained, but however further simplified, mostly because in terms of this multi-level governance and decision sharing between the regional or even national authorities and urban authorities, there is this obligatory project selection delegation to the urban authorities, and this had to be institutionalized through the IB status. So this is waived this time around, because we realized this created a lot of a burden, and it was sort of a stumbling stone that caused delays. However, this option still remains, so the member states could choose and maintain their cities as intermediate bodies if there is such a distribution of responsibilities. Then CLD will be mainstreamed, and what I wrote down here, it also goes urban. Now it will be also a tool for delivering sustainable urban development. There is no, unfortunately, integration of all funds at a big level. However, there is one single regulation for 7 funds, and it's a lot shorter than the one before. So that's already a step forward. But under the CLD, the rule will be that the lead fund, the fund from which the CLD will draw the most, will rule. So there is this feature which will come handy. And then ultimately, there is a challenge for the member states, because we will be open to any other tool that member states designs. So let's see where this leads us, and we are looking for innovative proposals on the part of member states. So you know, all in all, when I summarize this like this, Ilona, I think you said you'll need to look for 100% to get 70. When you listed before all your advice to post-2020, I think actually you got 100. Yeah. So let's see how this all plays out. Let's see how this all plays out. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Zeljka. I have a last question for you. Do you think that these collaborative tools should be or can be defined as a precondition for receiving European funds?
Yeah.
After what we have heard from Lucas.
Well, we certainly precondition the existence of the integrated strategy, which needs to be delivered through collaborative method with involving a large variety of partners or multi-governance arrangements. So there is this precondition. The rest is left open, and it's up to the member states, but nobody prevents member states to, again, by applying the partnership principle, why negotiating future programs, they are free to introduce their own conditionalities if needed, or if they would see fit, or if they would see this is in line with direction they want to pursue.